And the third topic today comes to us from Jessica Hassell, who writes, "Hi, John. I was wondering if you had a chance to read Kelly Marie Tran's piece about her leaving social media over the racial and sexist abuse she took. It's heartbreaking and insightful all at the same time. Why do human beings act like that?" Okay, thanks a lot for the question, man. And as many of you guys will remember, actress Kelly Marie Tran, who is just delightful. I mean, she is the hardest core nerd girl you're ever going to meet. Before she had to leave social media, I mean, she's always, talking about her next Dungeons and Dragons game, showing off all her collectibles and blah, blah. Like, she's as hardcore nerd as they come. And she's awesome. Anne had a chance to meet her. Anne just loves this girl. I love this girl. I think she's wonderful. Now, I didn't like the way they wrote the Rose character in The Last Jedi. I had my issues with that, but she is all kinds of wonderful. She's a great person. Anyway. Now, as many of you guys know, she became the target of a lot of racial and sexist abuse. Now, I'm not talking about, let me be very clear about this. Always got to preface with this. I'm not talking about people who just didn't like The Last Jedi. That's fine. People who didn't like The Last Jedi, you know what they're called? They're called film fans. Because we all love and dislike certain movies. And there's a bunch of people that didn't like The Last Jedi just because they didn't like The Last Jedi. That's cool. However, there is within that legitimate group of film fans a bunch of cousin-humping, sniveling, cowardly, basement-dwelling losers who decided to hide amongst those legitimate movie fans who just didn't like The Last Jedi, to hide amongst them and use them as camouflage and use them as human shields as a way to espouse their racism and their sexism, and they used other people who just didn't like The Last Jedi as cover. They used them as cover to just try to espouse their own racial hatred, their own sexism, their own kind of stuff. And it was hard. Before she pulled her stuff down, man, all you had to do is spend 2 minutes reading through the comments that people were leaving on her page. All you had to do, there's that Wikipedia page that changed her name from Rose Tico, the name of the character, to Ching Chong Ching Chang, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the amount of abuse was, it just made you disgusted to even be a part of the human race. It was awful. And again, these low-life, cousin-humping, pathetic, cowardly, basement-dwelling losers were using legitimate movie fans who just didn't like The Last Jedi as human shields and hide amongst them. And it was pathetic. It's pathetic. Anyway, moving forward from that, Kelly Marie Tran, obviously, as a result of all the abuse, just left social media altogether. Something we're seeing more and more people do now. But she put out her first public response to the abuse, to why she made the decision to pull off, what she was going through, and it's really insightful. I highly encourage all of you to look it up and read it for yourself. I highly encourage everybody to look it up and read it for yourself. But I pulled a couple of excerpts that I thought were quite insightful, and I just want us to look at these here for a moment. First of all, here's one of the things that Kelly Marie Tran wrote. She wrote, "It wasn't their words, it was that I started to believe them. Their words seemed to confirm what growing up as a woman and a person of color already taught me, that I belonged in the margins and spaces, valid only as a minor character in their lives and in their stories. Their words reinforced a narrative I had heard my whole life, that I was, quote unquote, other, that I didn't belong, that I wasn't good enough simply because I wasn't like them. And that feeling I realize now was and is shame. A shame for the things that made me different. A shame for the culture from which I came from. And to me, the most disappointing thing was that I felt it all. Because the same society that taught some people they were heroes, saviors, inheritors of the manifest destiny ideal, taught me I existed only in the background of their stories, doing their nails, diagnosing their illnesses, supporting their love interests, and perhaps the most damaging, waiting for them to rescue me." Now, she goes on to write a very affirmative statement saying, you know what, but I'm done with that. I know who I am. And I'm just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. And it was great. It's a very powerful piece. And again, those are just some excerpts. I really encourage you to look at them and read them all. And then immediately hopping online was Kelly Marie Tran's biggest supporter, of course, Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill himself, who after reading that article immediately went online and said, I said it before, I'll say it again. What is not to love? I love you, Lone. Lone is Kelly Marie Tran. She reveals in the article that her real first name is Lone. I'll get to that in a second. We don't deserve you, and you are just getting started. Hashtag real life hero Rose Tico, hashtag real life hero Kelly Marie Tran, and then the link to the article that he was referring to. Now, also in the article, she talks about, cultural shaming and stuff like that. Even the fact that her parents renamed her so she would have an easier time here to Kelly Marie Tran instead of Lone Tran, right? And she mentions that in the article, that her real name is actually Lone. And she uses that to espouse the point. It's funny because I grew up with a friend named John Langford. And John Langford was Vietnamese. He was adopted by Canadian Caucasian parents. And they were wonderful people. And they gave him the name John. Just their motivation wasn't to try to erase his heritage. Their motivation was to make sure he has an easier time. I understand that. But as John got older, he started really to identify with his ethnicity, with his background, stuff like that, and he changed his first name back to his original birth first name, which was Tran. His real name was, I believe it was Tran Van Schwan. I think that was his name, but he kept Langford because he loves his family. He identifies with his family. So his name became Tran Langford. And now he's in the behind-the-scenes entertainment industry, stuff like that. He's doing great stuff up there in Canada now, and I remember that. So I had friends who did that. My own family, to a much smaller degree. Like when my family came over on the boat, particularly my grandfather. My grandfather came over first with his brothers, right? My grandfather's name's Giovanni. But, to fit in more, took the name John. The English version of Giovanni just took the name John and started going by John, right? I was named after my grandfather. Some of you guys know, my name's Giovanni. But I was known as and called and named John after my grandfather, because that's what we did here. But I'm not a visible minority. So, my experience of that is like this compared to people like my friend Tran, compared to people like Kelly Marie Tran. So I thought that was all very interesting. What I loved about the article was that it was humanizing. It humanizes and puts a face to this. I think a lot of online trolls, I think a lot of them are trolls because they don't get that you're talking about human beings. It's not humanized for them, right? I think some people, once they realize and actually put a face to thing, I think a lot of people who are trolls stop being trolls. And what I love about this article is that it's a very human. It wasn't an angry article. It's a very humanizing article, and I liked it a lot, and I thought it spoke volumes, and I was really proud of her for the article that she wrote. So I encourage all you guys to go and check that out and see what you think about it. All right, let's move on to the next topic.